Sam Collier is a communicator at North Point Ministries, as well as the Director of City Strategy for the Rethink Group. Sam is also the host of 2 nationally syndicated radio podcasts and co-founder of the faith-based consulting firm, the Resource Group Global. Through his nonprofit No Losing Inc., Sam has empowered over 100,000 young people to have a winning mindset in life, to achieve their goals by creatively making education relevant. Sam's motto is, when your story connects to God's story, it leads to a greater story. Please welcome Sam Collier.
Wow. You guys look so good. How you guys doing this morning? You doing all right? Awesome. Who is excited to be in church this morning? Is anybody excited about that? Yeah. Well, I bring you greetings from America. I promise we are not as bad as we look on the television. I promise that. I'll be honest, this is my first time ever speaking in Canada. And so I got to call my mom and tell her I made it. Like, Mom, I made it. I met your pastor for the first time today, Brett. We emailed a couple times, and when I saw him in person, I said, I don't think this is him. I said, what do you do here? Just may I ask? He said, I'm the pastor. I said, are you who I've been emailing with? He said, yes. I said, well, you're 12. What? How are you the pastor? He looks good. Can you make some noise for your pastor right now? And his wife, I love it. You know, something else that is incredible to me is that I grew up in the South, and I've been friends with the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. for a long time. And one of the things that he said that I thought was critical and also important and sometimes saddening is that on Sunday, it can be the most segregated hour in America. But for me, today is huge to be able to be in a church where that's not the case. Can you just give God some praise for what he's done in this place? This is unbelievable. It's unheard of. And it is what heaven's going to look like. Can we be honest? It's going to be amazing. We're going to help each other. The black people are going to help the white people dance. And the white people are going to help the black people be on time. Not all of us, but some of us, right? And we're going to help each other cook. I mean, it's going to be incredible. And let me go ahead and say, not all black people are late before I get in trouble, because it will happen to me. We're not all late. I know, just me. I am so excited to be here again in this conference, DNA. I mean, studying and understanding the DNA of what this ministry was kind of built upon, and that's missions, that's going around the world and being a part of God's design in an incredible way. How was Danielle Strickland last week? Was she just incredible? Come on, give it up. She's been a friend for a long time. Carrie Newhoff is a friend up in Canada as well. And so it's just been amazing to be a part of what God is doing in this place and in this church. Now, just before I jump into the message, you know, I grew up in the black church. And so to make myself feel a little bit more comfortable, I want you to do something with me. Now, don't get nervous. I'm not going to ask you to run around the room or speak in tongues. It's not going to happen. But what I do want you to do is give me a little bit of energy. I'm used to some energy. I asked you if you were excited to be here this morning, and you gave me like a 5 out of a 10. And I need at least probably an 11 out of 10 when I ask you that question. Who's excited to be in church this morning? Woo! I'm feeling good. All I need is the organ. That's all I need. One more thing, 100% participation on this. Everybody get a partner. Look them in the eyes right now. Somebody right next to you. Come on, 100%. If you're looking at me, you're not participating. If you're looking at me, look, get a partner, somebody next to you. Look them in the eye. I mean, I want you to get in there really close. Hopefully you've brushed your teeth this morning. You've popped a mint. Here's what I want you to say to the person next to you, like you mean it. I mean, from your soul. You look good this morning. Do it now. Do it now. Yeah. That's it. Some of you didn't believe it. You didn't mean it when you said it, but that's okay. That's called kindness. That's called kindness. I want to illuminate for your understanding this morning a principle that is so near and dear to me that I think is at the core of missions. It's at the core of Christianity. It's all throughout the Bible. You see God kind of working this way. Can we put that principle up on the screen? God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Would you agree? That God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Just by show of hands, who's a superhero fan in the building? Anybody? Any Marvel fans? Avenger fans? Wonder Woman fans? Shout out to the ladies. I got to ask you this, and you know why. Any Black Panther fans? Okay, I had to ask you. I mean, you knew I was going to ask you that. I'll be honest with you, my favorite superhero besides Black Panther, and don't judge me on this, don't judge me for this, is Batman. Thank you. One hand clap in the front. That's right. And let me tell you why Batman is my favorite superhero. And I think some of you can jump to the conclusion as to why. You know why? He's my favorite superhero because he really doesn't have any powers. Can we be honest about it? He can't really fly. He can't teleport. He can't set on fire. You know, I love the movie in Black Panther when he's like, I never freeze, and he drops to the bottom. I mean, he kind of out of this spaceship, right? Batman's not doing that. He really just kind of has a lot of money and some cool tricks. Can we be honest? He's got some cool tricks and he knows some kung fu and he's able to do some incredible things. But if I were to be honest, what I really love about Batman is that I feel like he's the closest to me. He's one of the greatest examples of somebody ordinary taking what they have and leveraging it to do the extraordinary. Now, I don't want to talk about Batman this morning, but what I do want to talk about is this principle and how God uses this to accomplish his will. And so in order to do that, I want to talk to you about 3 people. The first one is a good friend of mine named Donk. Now, don't laugh. That's his name. Nickname. Can you say that with me? Donk. You did it. I didn't think you would do it. You did it. The next person I want to talk to you about is Moses. And then the last person I want to talk to you about is you. Here's what I believe. I think if we can talk about all 3 of these folks, that this principle of God using the ordinary to do something extraordinary will come alive to us in a way like never before. I want to introduce you to Donk for a second. Can we put his picture up on the screen? There he is. Look at him. At one time, Donk was one of the biggest rappers in America. He has a cousin that he kind of came up with named Lil Bootsy. I don't know if you've heard of Lil Bootsy before, but he had a hit song called Wipe Me Down. It actually went like this. Wipe me down. That's how the song went. Some of you are laughing because you were in the club. You remember those days. I know. Don't tell anybody. We're in church. You just listen to Hillsong now. I got it. Donk and Lil Bootsy were cousins, and one time, Donk was at the height of the rap game. But that's not where his story starts. No, his story starts in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If you were to ask Donk where he was from in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, he would say, I'm from the slums, the worst part, the war zone. In fact, if I were to paint the picture a little bit more for you, by age 9, Donk was carrying firearms because it was so dark. In that region, you either conquered or you were conquered. He learned that at an early age, so he carried firearms. He joined gangs. He started selling drugs. Long story short, some years went by age 14 or 15, Donk got caught in a drug raid, and the police ran in, and a couple guys got shot, and they died. Now, Donk didn't shoot the people, but he was in the middle of it. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you know anything about stories like Donk's and where he comes from and all of that, you understand that the police just grabbed them all up and took them, really to jail. And then they went through the court system, and he was poor, could not afford a lawyer, and so they all got charged with homicide and a life plus 90 years in prison. Now you're like, what? He's 15. That happened to him? He went to prison? Yeah, they sent him to Angola at 15. And at 15, he started serving a life plus 90-year sentence for something he didn't do but was a part of. As Donk is in Angola, the first 2 years, he kind of realizes, wait, I've gone from one war zone to the next war zone. I've gone from one slum to the next slum. And he said, well, the rules are the same. You either conquer or you're conquered. So he started trying to conquer, even in prison. He got wild. He got crazy. He was starting fights. He was fighting for turf. Until one day he got so depressed and so angry that he got ready to take his life. This had been about 2 years. He's age 17, and he is in the cell by himself, getting ready to take himself out. And one of the guys that were in the drug raids with him, that were in prison, they found him before he killed himself, rushed into the cell and said, hey, man, what are you doing? Wait, stop. He said, man, get out of my face. This is too much. I'm ending it now. He said, hold on. I see you've been wilding out and acting crazy. I know this is hard. He said, but I'm going to tell you this. If you're going to make it in here or make it out of here, you're going to have to learn how to pray. He said, pray? He said, yeah. You got to learn how to pray. And he walked out of the cell. Well, prayer was a foreign idea for Donk. It's not where he came from. It's like, well, what has God ever done for me? So on and so forth. He tries it out, though, because what else are you going to do? So Donk begins to pray. And his elementary prayers sounded like this. God, if you can get me out of here, get me out of here. Then as his prayer life continued, they started sounding like, God, your will be done, and just be with me, and I'm with you, and I'm for you, and help me, and sustain me. Well, this went on for another 5 years. Donk has been in prison for about 7 years at this time. He has lost his entire teenage years. He's well into manhood, still in Angola. But prayer has sustained him. Well, one day, his lawyer comes out of nowhere within the 7 years, and he says, Donk, I got some good news. He said, well, what's going on? He said, I think I've managed to get a plea bargain. The judge has agreed to reduce your sentence from life plus 90 down to 7 years and 6 months if you'll plead guilty. He said, well, when's the court date? He said, well, it's coming up soon. So he walks in the court. His mom is there. He's getting ready to plead guilty, and she doesn't know about the deal. And so he's like, I plead guilty. And she's freaking out. She's like, no, my baby, my baby, my baby. She's like, calm down, Mom. There's something going on. He pleads guilty. He gets out of prison 6 months later. I just want you to see this. He goes from being a drug dealer, a gangster, in poverty, to the worst prison in America, to prayer, to a miracle. Now, you would think that after he got out of prison, that he would just serve God. Am I right? I mean, wouldn't you do it? You would think that after he got out, he'd be showing up at DNA 2019. You know what I'm saying? Even, or whatever year that was, 99, whatever it was, you would think that he would just go, okay, God, well, it's all about you. It's time. I mean, but you forgot. I told you he had a cousin named Lil Bootsy. And they were going to wipe me down. And so he got out of prison, and Wipe Me Down was a huge song. And so Lil Bootsy said, well, come on the road with me. I mean, you out now. Let's go celebrate. And so Donk, don't miss this, turns his back on God and starts rapping. Flying all around the country, back into the drug scene again. But now they've got millions of dollars and they're traveling everywhere. Well, one day as Donk is traveling on the tour, he wakes up at 5 a.m. God wakes him up. And he says to Donk, what are you doing? If you were to talk to Donk, he's a good friend of mine. He said it was an out-of-body experience. God was speaking to me. Said, what are you doing? And he said this to Donk. Don't miss this. I love this. He said, I didn't rescue you so that you could go back to where you were. I rescued you so that you could go and rescue others. What are you doing? Donk said in that moment, he bust out crying. Because he remembered what God did for him. God reminded, wait, I took you from a life plus 90 years out. I took you out of there. You prayed and you turned your back on me. He says the Lord speaks to him in that moment. And he says, I want you to go back and rescue some folks. What are you going to do with this opportunity? Donk gives his life back to him in that moment, and God tells him, I want you to go and start a prayer line. He's like, what? A prayer line? I'm Wipe Me Down. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not starting a prayer line. That's lame. He says, I want you to start a prayer line. Long story short, to this day, Donk has been doing the prayer line. 50,000 people have been impacted by the prayer line. And don't miss this, 20,000 have been saved through the prayer line. They've given their life to Christ. And the last detail of this story is that 20% of the 20,000 were in Angola. God has used somebody ordinary to do something extraordinary. Now, there are three things that I want to draw out of this story today, and just stay with me for a second because these three things are critical. Can we put them up on the screen for me? Here are these 3 points that we notice in this story. The first one is this: Donk came from the slums. He was born into it. After he was born into it, he raised himself up and started to enslave the very slums that he came from, investing drugs back into the community, gang violence, so on and so forth. And then finally, he goes through an experience. God rescues him, and he is sent back to save the very slums that he came from. You know whose story that is? That's Moses' story. I don't know if you've heard the story of Moses before. I'm sure that you have, but we understand that Moses was born into a slum. Moses was born as a Hebrew, as an Israelite, during the time in which Pharaoh was enslaving them. And also born during a time when Pharaoh made a decision to kill all of the boys that were being born, because he was afraid that the Israelite people would rise up and overtake him. Many theologians believe that Pharaoh may have had some insight on one day a deliverer coming in the form of a male, and so he was trying to do anything that he could to get rid of the boys. Well, Moses' mother hears about this. Obviously, he wants to save her baby. Maybe she knows something we don't know. And We know the story if you've ever seen The Prince of Egypt. Now, didn't all happen that way, but she takes the baby, she puts him in a basket and wraps him up. And she sends Moses up the river, and he gets welcomed into Pharaoh's family. He is raised with the Egyptians, and he becomes a part of them and starts to enslave the very people that he came from. He participates. How many theologians can agree on when Moses realized that he was an Israelite, but at some point he did? And in there somewhere, he saw one of the Egyptians getting ready to torture one of the other Israelites and kill them. And Moses gets upset and kills the Egyptian. He has committed a crime, and it freaks him out so much that he runs away from the very place he grew up in to a faraway land. He leaves, and he has an experience where he meets his wife, and he turns his life around and kind of starts to serve God. He becomes a shepherd. It's night and day. And in his new reality, God interrupts him. And this is what happens. Can we put that passage up on the screen for me? Now, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. Now, before I read anymore, whoever reads the Bible and gets bored? Anybody? You don't want to admit it. You're in church. I got it. I mean, when you're reading Leviticus or Numbers, and you're like, what are all these names? Right? Anybody ever fallen asleep reading a scripture like, oh, I was going to study more, but you start the year plan in January and you stop January 29th. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to do more. Right? Here's what I want you to do for a second. Here's what we believe. We believe that the Bible is the living word. What does that mean? That means that if you get into it, it comes alive. But it doesn't come alive if you don't get into it. So I want you to act, just for a couple seconds, like this is Jurassic Park. Or Tomb Raider. Or whatever your favorite movie is. I want you to see this and let the words jump off. Because here's what I believe. If you can put yourself in this story, God will speak to you in a new way. All right, here we go. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. Next slide. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight. Why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, don't miss it, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Don't come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Next verse. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. Big statement. And I am concerned. Can we just live right there? He says, I've seen what's happening and I am concerned about their suffering. Next verse. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and okay, let's just keep. You know, that's what it's like when you're reading. You're like, I don't know that name. What's the point? Next slide. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing. No, come on. Stay in the story for it. This language is powerful language, and now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, say it with me. Go. Come on, let's say it. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Woo, what a story. We know what happens next, don't we? Hopefully you do. If you don't, I'll tell you, he frees the people. Some plagues and some hard conversations and some seas parting later, he frees his people. Moses was born in the slums. He was later raised up and started participating in the enslavement of the slums. He was rescued, turned around, and then sent back to save the slums. That's Donk's story, that's Moses' story. But you know whose story that is? You know who else? Come on. That's your story. That's my story. And if all of it isn't your story yet, it should be your story. You see, we all came from the slums. We were all born into a sinful world. We were all born into a dark place. All of us born under the weight of sin. It is almost as if Moses' story is a foreshadow of what our story would be. We were all born slaves to sin. And then at some point, and if we were to just be honest, it was me and you in the back corner at 2 a.m. in the morning. At some point, we all participated in the enslavement of more of our brothers and sisters. Can we be honest? If you've ever participated in sin, you have participated in furthering the darkness in this world. Maybe it was a heartbreak. Maybe you lied. Maybe you cheated. Maybe you stole. Maybe you did some things you never told anybody about, right? Maybe there's some things that you did that nobody knows but God. Maybe there's some things so dark that you participated in that you can't even bring yourself to talk about it. But you come in and you go, okay, it's just you and God. If you've participated in sin at all, you have participated in the enslavement of God's people, of his children. And then you know what happens, don't you? Can we be honest? For many of us, maybe not all of us in the room, but for many of us, God rescues us. Right? He comes to us and he says, you don't have to be a slave to sin anymore. He comes to us and he says, hey, and as a matter of fact, stop hurting my people. Stop doing this stuff. Stop engaging in these behaviors that are not only causing you issues, but it's causing this world a problem. No, and he invites us. What does he invite us into? Into a life of freedom. And here's the next part, and into the solution. But here's the issue with most Christians. Not you, but your neighbor. Not you, but your cousin next door. Most Christians stop at being rescued. Most of us stop right there, right? Like, We stop where don't stop. Thank you for rescuing me. I'm out of prison. I'm about to live it up, wipe me down. Right? That's what most of us stop. Okay, God, you saved me. Woo! Thank you so much. I can go on and get back on with my life. Okay, I'm free from sin. Cool. That means I can kind of dib and dab. I can go in. I can kind of double dutch this thing. Oh no, God, you with me? No, it's fine. Or for some of us, it doesn't look that obvious. For some of us, it's, I'll just go and get a 9 to 5 and just be normal. Yeah, no, God, it's me. I'll show up on Sunday, Wednesday, no, I'll read my Bible, I'll participate, but but here it is. I'm not going to do anything more. I'm just going to live in my freedom. I'm not interested in helping anyone else live in their freedom. Why? Because it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. Wait, no. God, I got to sacrifice for this? Wait, God, no, you mean I can't just do it whatever I want to do? I just want to do this. But many of us stop at our own rescue until God has a Moses moment and a donk moment with us. And for some of us, that moment may be right now. And he sits us down and he says, I didn't rescue you so you could coast. I didn't rescue you so you could just go back to the life you came from. Moses, I didn't send you out here so you could just hang out and be in the and just have your fun with the sheep. And no. I rescued you so you can go and rescue others that are in darkness. He says, that's why I've rescued you. If you've not been rescuing anyone else, if you've not surrendered to the strategy and the solution, if you've not accepted the mission, you are missing half of Christianity. You're missing half of what God has designed for you. And many of us are struggling in our faith because we've only settled for half. You want to know why you went back to the sin? Because you never got in the game. There's a statistic that says, and this is a big one, stay with me, that serving, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about missions. We're talking about evangelism. We're talking about giving back. We're talking about going above and beyond. We're talking about sacrificing our own desires for the desire of God and for the upliftment of his people. We're talking about going the extra mile. We're talking about serving. A statistic says that serving does more for our faith than Bible study, worship, and prayer combined. Did you hear that? More than coming to church, more than singing a song, more than Bible study. When you get in the game, it does more for your faith. Some of you have been bored with Christianity in church because you're not serving. You're not giving back. You're not sacrificing. No, that's the beauty of what we do. That's the beauty of Christianity. The opportunity, here it is, to die for the sake of the kingdom. You want to know God? Give up your life. You'll know him in a way like never before. And when God has a people that have surrendered their lives for his mission, not just their own or their own salvation, but before the kingdom and the salvation of others, he can do something extraordinary with them. You want to know how to go from ordinary to extraordinary in the kingdom of God? Put your life down and pick up your cross. Put your life down and go and rescue someone else. As we close, there's just 3 people I want to talk to for a second. 3 groups. Can we put the slide up on the screen here? Because hopefully many of us that are either watching online or in the room or maybe in overflow, hopefully at this point many of us have said, you know what, if I'm not in the game, I'm getting in the game. If I haven't been doing enough, I want to do more. Hopefully you're at that point. And if that's you, I've got some action steps for you as we close here. And the first action step is this one. It's for the people that are still in the slums. You've never given your life to Christ. He hadn't freed you from sin yet. I want to invite you into the light. If you've never considered him before, maybe you consider him. Maybe you give him your life so that the extraordinary can happen through you. Maybe you're out of the slums. You've given your life to Christ, but you've settled for a 9-to-5 at Netflix. Or you've settled for just an ordinary life, but you know God has been calling you to more. In fact, if you don't know that, I'm telling you now, God has called you to more. Maybe you're not giving back enough. Maybe you're not helping. You're not rescuing. I want you to start going into the dark. What's amazing about this organization that we're in DNA 2019, is that God has constructed a church and he has built systems in this organization to help you go to the dark, to help you become a part of God's mission. You don't have to do it on your own. They're helping you out. And here's the last one. For those that are doing the work, but you may be tired, I want to encourage you to not give up. I want to encourage you not to grow weary in well-doing. Can I tell you something? As I round third base here and head home, whenever you give your life to the kingdom, the attack starts. Because you become a threat to the enemy. Of course your life got harder. Of course things felt like they were going crazy. Of course your finances became challenged. That's not a coincidence. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in heaven. Of course things started getting crazy. You accepted the call. And I want to encourage you today to not let the enemy's attacks weigh you down and stop you. And maybe even for some of us, God is using the pressure to make a diamond. If you'll stay, he'll refine you like never before. Can we stand all around as we close? Grab somebody's hand or put an arm around someone. I want to pray for you if you're in any one of those groups, that God will do something incredible. I think for the last group, he's going to release a new grace, a fresh wind to continue the work. And if that's you anywhere, just lift your hands as we pray. If you're in any one of those groups, and receive God's goodness. God, we love you. We thank you for who you are and for what you're about. God, I pray right now for those that have never given their life to you. I pray that you would give them the courage to take a step towards the kingdom, into their destiny, that their sins would be forgiven, and that they would be in right relationship with you so that you can do the extraordinary. God, I pray for the second group of those that have maybe settled just for a mediocre life, or well, I'm just, a copywriter, or I'm just this, and God didn't want to do anything with me. I pray that you would give them a new fire to run into the uncomfortable places, sacrifice their own comfort for the sake of the gospel. And finally, I pray for those that are already in the field, that may be growing weary, that may be tired, that are under attack, or maybe you're just training them and it's getting hard. God, I pray that they would not grow weary in well-doing, and I pray for a fresh wind in this place, a fresh grace. God, let them receive your goodness and your power and your energy, that they would get back on the wall so that you can complete the work that you're doing in them. Let us remember that you do extraordinary things through ordinary people, if we get out of the way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Our program is recorded at the People's Church in Toronto, Canada. If you live in the GTA or plan on visiting, Please join us. We'd love to meet you.